Hello everyone, welcome to TechSpark's 15th virtual coffee morning. I'm Geraint, I'm just here to introduce our wonderful speaker today, who is in fact Alex Neal, who is the Managing Director at Untitled Communications, and she's going to be talking us through how to raise your profile as an investable leader. And I think I'm just going to let her get on with that. Alex, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thanks very much to TechSpark for having me. So like you will all be aware, I'm talking today about how to raise your profile as an investable leader. So bear with me while I just work out how screen. There we go. So how to raise your profile as an investable leader. So before I jump into the talk, just wanted to say hello. I'm sure there's lots of you on here that I haven't met before. So my name's Alex. I've never been to one of these before, so it's really good to join. I'm the MD of Untitled Communications. We do external communications and PR for B2B and corporate companies. I've been working in communications for over a decade, and a lot of that has been spent working in the tech sector, which is a particular passion of mine. That has spanned, big global corporates like Huawei, always fun, LinkedIn, Oracle, McAfee, all the way through to kind of smaller disruptive brands. Now I'm at Antidote, so we work with corporate and B2B companies, but lots of tech firms in there. We've worked with the likes of Decoded, Quantcast, Quantum Black, which is owned by McKinsey. So yeah, really exciting to sort of extend my experience. As a team, we're based in both Bristol and London, so we've got a good breadth across the UK. And there are two things that really matter to us as an agency. So firstly, we not only love tech, but we love tech that solves real problems that the world is facing today. And then secondly, we absolutely love data. Everything that we do, whether it's a communication strategy or a creative campaign, we make sure is grounded in real world data and insights. We really want to move PR and communications away from the sort of Mad Men style era of doing things. So what's to come? So what I'm talking about today is how you can create a profile for yourself as a founder, specifically so that investors can create a level of confidence in you before you even get to the pitch room. So three things we'll cover. Firstly, shaping your reputation, so sort of the why behind doing that. Secondly, 4 easy ways that you can raise your profile today. And then thirdly, we'll take a look back at learnings and things for you to take away. So, shaping your reputation. Like I said, before we go into the how of raising your profile, I think it's important to look at the why as well, and also what elements to consider. So, to some of you, it may or may not feel business critical to build your own personal profile. Obviously, as a founder in the fast-moving tech industry, you probably have your hands pretty full already. Creating a product, selling it, growing the business. However, there are many different reasons why creating your own personal profile should be bumped up the priority list. And here are some of them. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but ones that I would call out would be, firstly, you can show what you're all about as a founder. Sometimes it can be really difficult, especially in a competitive marketplace, to differentiate your business from others. And actually, the founder can play a really critical role in sort of adding that more human personal layer to a business, particularly when you've got a sort of unique personal story or mission behind what you're doing. And then secondly, I would say what is key is adding credibility to you as a founder. So a lot of the tips that I'm going to talk through are aimed at gaining third-party sort of credibility and interest in you as a founder. So I just want to make the point that what I'm doing today is making a clear distinction between the reputation of the founder and that of their business. Both are equally as important, but it is important to consider the reputation of the person leading the business. When you look at this quote from Untitled Capital, who have invested in the likes of Fitbit, Eventbrite, they say that when they back an early stage company, they're actually backing the founder first and foremost. And then a couple of other sort of insights here from Octopus and Index about, what they're looking for in a founder and how to present your own personal profile. So Octopus say, don't over embellish your story. Investors will see straight through it. Authenticity is really important, and it will be something that you see I bring through in a lot of the things I talk about today. And then Index, they've got a very clear understanding of who it is that they really want to be investing in and meeting and working with. That's not to say that it's the same across the board, but it's worth sort of paying attention to the fact that a lot of these, VCs and investors will have specific visions in mind about the people that they want to work with. So for a lot of founders, and I'm really sorry to stereotype, but especially those who have a techie background, it can be tempting to let your product or your business do the talking for you. But as we've just read, when you're the founder, you really can't afford to hide yourself away. Investors want to know that you as a person are worth their time. While the business proposition and market demand and early commercial success are all important, confidence in the person leading the business is equally important. Investors really need to know that founders are the best and right person to make the business go the distance and also return on their investment. So my message for those of you who aren't comfortable being under the spotlight, you will need to get comfortable. However, if it's something that, doesn't come naturally to you, there are ways to gently build that up. So don't think that this is something that you either do or you don't do. There's certainly, steps in between. So it's not necessarily just about shouting about how great you are. When we work with founders at Antidote who want to raise their profile, we go by this rule of 3 to give us some focus in what we're doing. So firstly, at the top, experience. You need to show that you have experience in your field, but also experience in creating or running a business, whether that went well previously or not. Secondly, expertise is critical. Are you an expert in your field? Do you have a high level of knowledge about the field your business is in? Is that a head and shoulders above, others in the industry? And then finally, your vision. And I put passion in there as well. This is really like the color on your profile and on you as a founder. And sometimes it means that it's the hardest to convey. It's not just necessarily showing that you live and breathe the work that you do, but it's your story. So things like, where did your business come from and why do you care about it so much? Is there, a personal reason, or is there a particular challenge that you were just desperate to solve? And then in terms of, a more sort of tangible vision, have you got a long-term plan for where you'll take the business? And again, when it comes to profiling, it's not just the hard numbers, but it's also who are you going to help and how will you make their lives or world look different in 10, 20 years' time? So a big mistake a lot of founders do make is just telling people about their experience and expertise and vision. It's all well and good saying that you have 15 years experience as a leader in the semico industry and that you know stuff. But what's important is to show that you have that experience. So applying it in a real world setting is much more powerful than just expressing that. So for example, can you mentor up and coming leaders? Sit on awards judging panels, share your learnings on LinkedIn. Those are all ways of showing your experience and your expertise. And the same applies to your passion. Saying you're passionate about something is rarely as impactful as showing it. For example, what do you do or what do you read outside of running a business that reinforces that passion? How do you work with the wider industry or people that you help through your business aside from the business itself? So these are all really important things to consider. But one other thing that I would say is it's important to note that while the profile of you as a founder is definitely important, not all investors are looking for the same sort of person as we saw earlier. Ultimately, my advice is just be as authentic as possible. Your personal founder story is unique to you, and you can only really truly project an image that is honest to who you are. And that will come across whether you're speaking to media or running content for your corporate website. So we'll go through 4 ways that you can raise your profile today. So what I wanted to do was provide a few tips that are designed to be easily actionable and really simple to do. With a lot of these, you don't need a big budget or a big team to make them happen. It's things that you can get started on today. So number 1 is starting with social. So this is always where we start with founders who want to raise their profile, especially those who are really starting from scratch. Social channels we see as very important because it's where any investor or employee or journalist will go to find out more about who you are. And not only is it important to be visible there, but also make sure that the content on your pages and the things that you're posting accurately and authentically, sorry to overuse that word, reflect who you are and what you stand for. LinkedIn and Twitter aren't the only channels out there, obviously. If you're a Snapchat person, go for it. But in the context of appealing to investors, this is generally what we see as most powerful. So just a few tips here about how you can get started. So on LinkedIn, if you haven't already, sort your profile out, make sure you've got a great picture, detailed bio, add a couple of links. You can actually follow, if you've got some investors in mind, follow them, engage with what they're posting. Some of you might be aware that LinkedIn has a publishing function, which makes it really easy for anybody to write their own blog post, whether that's a 1,000-word essay or a 300-word thought of the day. So again, consider things like writing a weekly or monthly blog post. And then finally, I would say, it's not enough just to sort of exist on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're sharing, updates with your network, but make sure that those are timely and insightful. And one of the things that I talk about with our clients is, give it the sort of so what lens before posting. Ask yourself, is what I'm broadcasting going to bring any value to people? If it isn't, then it's probably best not to share it. Same with Twitter. So the tips are fairly similar. Get your page ready. And actually, this is a really good place to promote the roles that you hold outside your business. You can list them in your bio. LinkedIn is a great place to keep up to date with industry discussions, whether those are spontaneous or organized. So spend a bit of time just seeing what's being talked about and contribute if you can. And then finally, similar to LinkedIn, don't just sort of exist and stalk. Make sure that you're sharing updates and insights, but also, ask others for their views. Twitter is a very well-engaged social network. So, it's very easy to get into a discussion with people about topics that are important to you. So we're always really encouraging our founders to find their own style with social channels. And a lot of them that we work with, they'll outsource the bigger pieces of content like LinkedIn blogs to an agency or a marketing team. But we'd always advise that, if you're running a LinkedIn channel or a Twitter channel, keep the content coming from you. It just keeps it true to you and feeling authentic. That said, there are a couple of tips here for what you should and shouldn't say or how not to use these channels. And a couple of them what I would point out would be, firstly, be focused. So what I would always advise clients is, before you start posting anything, have a think about, what are the 2 or 3 topics that you want to be known for? 2 of those might be to do with the industry you work in, but there might be one other thing that you're really passionate about. It could be work-life balance or a particular sport. Focus on talking about those so that people know, what to expect from you. Secondly, though, don't share too much or too little. Sometimes people get overexcited when they've got a quiet week, and they'll think, I'm just gonna, blast out some stuff to my LinkedIn network. Actually, that can be quite detrimental to building your profile. You want something which is, realistically frequent, that you can stick to. The other thing I would call out here is being subtle and sharing your experience. So experience is one of the rule of three, and LinkedIn and Twitter are great places to promote, where you've been and what you've done. But what I would say is, be subtle in that. You don't want to be writing a whole LinkedIn post or a Twitter chain about how, you worked in X business for 5 years. It's better to be subtle, just reference it where it's relevant. And also remember that whatever you're posting through your public profiles is intrinsically linked to your business. So as much as we'd encourage founders to be personable and human in what they're posting, don't forget you are a reflection of your brand. So anything that you post could come back on the business. So I wanted to show you all what we've done for a client in the past on LinkedIn. So this is a past client track record who do executive coaching. We worked with their founder and CEO, David Carey, on building his profile specifically on LinkedIn. So I just wanted to share one of these. This is one of his LinkedIn blog posts, and just point out a couple of things that I like about it. So the first thing is the title of the piece, Facing Fears. So it's a fairly sort of corporate article, but what we've done is built in a very kind of human topic, the idea of facing your fears. And he's brought in a lot of his own personal experience into this piece, which just gives it a more human feel and makes it feel just that little bit less corporate. Secondly, in his job title, he's listed not only that he's running this company, but he's also a Forbes contributor. Again, it's not necessarily connected to his company, but it's just a bit of kind of third-party validation, and shows that, he's doing other things alongside his business. And then the third thing is that if you have had a chance to read the opening of this article, you'll see that actually what it's talking about is his time spent as an Olympic athlete. So this article is not about his time as an Olympic athlete, but it's simply taking a learning from his experience during that time and applying it to the lessons that he gives to businesses now. That's a really great example of a subtle way of bringing out your experience without broadcasting it to your network. So moving on to the second tip, and the second tip is blogging. So this is a really great way of lifting the veil on your expertise, so one of those rule of three. And it gives you an opportunity to write about the things that you know about. There's lots of channels at your disposal, and pros and cons to each, and I can talk you through these three here. So owned channels, I've got Medium here, but actually an owned channel can also be a company blog on the company website, if you like. What I really like about owned channels is that it works really well for founders who aren't used to the spotlight. It also works really well when you're testing out your founder story or your corporate story, and you want to sort of start building up a bank of content without broadcasting it to too wide an audience. And you can also control the narrative. So actually, on your own channels like Medium or on your company blog, you can really write about what you want to write about. There's nobody who will be pulling you up saying, this is too corporate, or, you can't talk about your clients in this piece. So if you're someone who likes to write a lot, that's a great place to go. Secondly, social channels. So I've already talked about LinkedIn's publishing platform. This takes the own channels one step further, because you've got a ready-made audience who will see your content in the form of your network. And because that audience is there, it means that this content is easily shareable. So people will get notified that you publish something, and they have the option to engage with it or share it. But one thing I would say is, make sure you've got a level of confidence before you publish something. All of your articles are always connected to your profile unless you delete it. So just make sure that you'll be comfortable with it in 3-4 years' time. And then thirdly, earn channels. So Forbes is an example I've got in here because they, so if you're familiar with Forbes, they have contributor platforms where, you know, as a founder or a leader of business, you can set up your own channel and publish within a swim lane, whether that's sort of leadership strategy or something different. Lots of benefits to these channels. So first is obviously high credibility. As we saw with David Carey, you know, him being able to say, I'm a contributor to Forbes, that carries a lot of weight. And then because it's so credible, there is a large audience and a strong readership. And actually, when you're using a channel like Forbes, they have mechanisms to get your articles seen and read, so you will reach a really wide audience. But obviously, because of these sort of high payoffs, it does mean that it's harder to secure. So, you know, there's no guarantee that you'll get yourself a Forbes contributor channel. Set your sights on, you know, whilst you're using the owned and social channels. So what to write? We're not all natural born writers, but there are a few, you know, different things to inspire you to get you going on the first piece. Firstly, this calendar here is a reminder to look at what's happening in the world today. You know, is there anything that's changed in your world or in your industry that everyone's talking about that you have an opinion on? A great tip, actually, that my colleague Rob gave to me is that anniversary dates of, you know, industry-specific things can be a really great topic to write about. And you can even do countdown or a days after post in the style of something like 100 Days to Brexit or something like that. Or you can look into your crystal ball and do some future gazing. This is actually a really great way of showing your vision. You know, is there a problem that the world is facing right now that you think could be different in the future? And then finally, lessons learned. So have a look back, either on your own experiences or things that are happening in the world, and share some of the lessons to be taken from it. And that's exactly what we saw in the example I just showed you. David Carey was, you know, bringing out his experience as an Olympic athlete and talking about some of the lessons that he learned. So lots of different options out there, and this is a great place to start. And this is another example of some work we've done for a client recently. So Grant Powell is the founder and CEO of a property hospitality network. And he has a Forbes channel where he runs articles within his dedicated swim lane of leadership strategy. And I wanted to show you this piece just because it's a really great example of timeliness. The office being dead, obviously, where, you know, most of us at the moment are working from home. And there's a lot of discussion around, you know, whether we will ever go back to offices and whether things will ever be the same again. But it's also future gazing. You know, he's talking about the fact that it's evolving, and it opens the door to him to make predictions about how the office might look different in a decade or two. Later in his piece, actually, I couldn't fit it on this page, but he talks about his years running a co-working business, which, given the topic, actually fits in really nicely and shows off his experience and his expertise in this sector. So tip number 3 is profiling in the press. So this is a really good way to demonstrate credible third-party interest in you as a founder in your business. But what I would say is it's important that you are prepared and focused in the story that you tell before you approach any media. Over here is some of the questions that we would ask new clients in order to identify and shape what their story is. Most journalists will need some sort of news hook to take a profile as well. So as well as sort of asking yourself things like, what's unique about your story? How did you end up where you are today? There also needs to be a reason to sort of pitch it in at that moment in time. So perhaps, again, going back to that calendar, is there something happening in the industry that you work in that you have an opinion on? Or, for example, has your company done something pretty incredible recently that gives you a reason to be speaking out? A couple of the other things I would call out here, claiming firsts. So firsts, journalists just love. So for a lot of our clients, we always try and find out, have you been the first person to invent something, or have you been the first person to, achieve something in your sector that no one else has done by the age that you are? That can be a really powerful hook as well. Similarly, your founder mission. This goes back to the rule of three and the vision that you have. What is it that you are trying to solve? And this is not just about, what kind of product are you trying to put out there, but actually, who are you helping and how can you make their world and their lives look different? So these are just a few things to consider. And there are vast opportunities out there when it comes to founder profiles. Some of them, really high profile, some of them a bit more niche and sector specific. You might have seen the BBC CEO Secrets slot. That is a great place for sort of newer founders of smaller companies to be profiled. And actually, you can see here that with this quote, they really like the sort of personable angle and also the mission behind the business as well. How I Made It in the Sunday Times is another great one, and one I know that is often on the radar of investors. So that essentially interviews a founder about their journey so far and how they've made it. So it's fairly high profile, and it does mean that there's a certain revenue threshold that you have to cross in order to qualify for the piece. But again, something to aim for. And then, places like New Digital Age, e-consultancy, they have, regular slots where they essentially ask the same questions to interviewees each time. So that is a great place to go if you are someone who is newer to press profiling or equally newer to the spotlight. You can have a look back at profiles that have been run before, see what kind of questions they ask, and think about what your answer will be. Often those ones are written as well, so you don't need to sort of worry about preparing to speak to a journalist. It's something that you can do in your own time. And then obviously our wonderful TechSpark has a Startup for 10 slot. So that's a great place to go, as well as places like Sifted, which is backed by the FT. And then Monocle, if any of you listen to the Entrepreneurs podcast, that's another great place to go to. So tons of opportunities out there. It's just important to do your research beforehand, understand who it is that they tend to run stories on, and create an angle that fits well with that. And then there's a couple of examples here. So these are two amazing female tech founders we've worked with in the past. And this sort of shows you what those media profiles can actually look like. So on the left here, Director Magazine, that is a good example of a pre-existing slot which tends to ask the same sort of questions or follows the same kind of format. I think Director Magazine is actually defunct now, but they used to run a section called Leadership Lessons, where essentially they just ask for the top 4 to 5 lessons from a leader. Or over here, Forbes, this is another option, for more of a kind of wide-ranging interview. So Trevor Clausen, he's a contributor for Forbes, and he specialises in running entrepreneur profiles. And his don't tend to follow any sort of format. What he tends to do is runs an hour-long kind of in-depth call with the founder and then writes a piece. What I would say is, if you're new to press engagements or you haven't spent much time kind of fleshing out and testing your story as a founder and your company story, I would start with the former, just to build up the confidence and build up that story before you go for something like Forbes. And then finally, awards. So awards are, again, a really good way of getting someone else to blow your trumpet for you. Having accolades and awards to your name really shows. So going back to show, don't just tell. It shows how accomplished you are. And it can also open the door for a conversation around why you won it in the first place. I know there are some people who might look at competition for some awards and feel that it's just too high to warrant entering. But actually, even if you only get shortlisted or nominated, that in itself is still an achievement that you can shout about. And as I've noted here, actually, some award programs, whether it's in tech or specific founder business awards, they are recognised or run by media outlets. So it's not actually just the award that you're winning or being nominated for, but actually you'll get some sort of recognition and coverage alongside that too. So there are, again, like press, tons of opportunities out there. The right one for you to enter really does just depend on which industry you operate in and the stage you're at with the business, but also your priority, which industry do you want to be seen by? So the UK Tech Awards, a lot of you might be familiar with that. It's a sort of nationwide core tech industry award with national recognition and lots of corporate power behind it from sponsors. So 2 categories to consider there. If you're a woman, the Tech Businesswoman of the Year or the Tech CEO of the Year. The Bold Woman Award by Verve Co. That is specifically for women in business. If you're not familiar with that one, that's been running for 48 years across the world. So there's a lot of prestige and recognition attached to it. And full disclaimer, we work on that campaign, but I promise you, it is really worth entering. The Bold Future Award category is the one to look at as a founder. That one has recognised tons of female entrepreneurs who are quite early in their careers. People like Catherine Parsons, who founded Decoded, the digital education company. And I think it was last year, Poppy Gustafsson, who founded Darktrace, the cybersecurity unicorn. So really worth taking a look at. And then one that we'll all be aware of, TechSpark's own Sparkies. They have a Founder or Entrepreneur of the Year award as well. So again, a full spectrum of opportunities here, and there's plenty more out there. It's just about finding the right one for you. So you can, on awards, if you want to, take it one step further and consider putting yourself forward as a judge on an awards panel. Nothing says I'm experienced more than when you're the one deciding on who wins the awards. A lot of award programs each year do like to change up their judging panel. So we see, regular kind of annual calls for new judges. So lots of opportunities there. And going back to what I said earlier about show, don't tell, this is a really great way to show that you have passion and experience in your field. So it's worth looking at once you're at that stage. So that rounds off the 4 tips to raise your profile. I have been speaking at you all for a good 35, 40 minutes. And I'm aware this is probably a lot of new information. So let's just summarize some of the takeaways of today's talk. So firstly, remember, investors are just as interested in you as a founder as your business. The 2 are intrinsically linked, but I would still recommend giving some time to thinking about who you are and what your story is. Secondly, remember the rule of 3. It's all about bringing out your experience, your expertise, and your vision. Thirdly, for those of you who are newer to profile raising or aren't used to the spotlight, start with social media and blogging. Get a feel for being a bit more public with your profile and with your insights and expertise, and then build up to press and awards. And press and awards will be that next step up that give you third-party industry recognition on a wider scale. But regardless of all this, what I would say is just be authentic and true to who you are and what your story is. One of my biggest bugbears is reading profiles of founders who say they get up at 4 a.m. every day, for a 2-hour gym session before work. If that's not you, that's okay. There's a lot of appetite out there now, particularly from media, who want to hear from founders who are willing to be honest. And if you have a different story, generally they're going to be all ears and willing to hear it. So that pretty much wraps up everything that I was going to talk about. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to listening to me today. It's been a real pleasure to be doing my first virtual coffee morning with the brilliant TechSpark. If you would like to follow Antidote and keep in touch, here's a few links for you. Feel free to connect after the event and drop me a line with any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
So we do have, I've got a question actually, first off. I just want to know what you think is the biggest mistake you see founders making. Like when you online, is there anything that makes you really roll your eyes?
Yeah, I would say two things. So one is, it doesn't make me roll my eyes, but it frustrates me in that we can't unlock the potential. I've worked with a lot of founders who do really shy away from the spotlight, but it's not because they're sort of shy of the attention. It's because they feel that they're taking attention away from the employees that they work with, which is totally understandable. Often people who are leading the business, they want to put their team front and center. But actually what I'd say is the benefits of raising your own profile as a founder can actually really pay off for your team. They can feel proud that they're working for a company being led by someone so inspiring. And as the business grows in reputation, they can be proud to work for a company that, is so well known. And then the second thing I would say is probably oversharing on social media, particularly LinkedIn. You might have seen there's, a particular LinkedIn style that's emerged recently over the last couple of years where, people will get a bit evangelist about their experiences and their insights. And I think a lot of people do see through that. I would just go back to the point about being really authentic with what you're posting. Don't feel like you have to, say something groundbreaking or earth-shattering to get recognized. Just be, share what you think.
Great, thank you. And we have a question from Zara, who's the CEO and founder of Gap Square and a friend of TechSpark. She's asking, sort of in a world where people like to back people who look like them, what's the best strategy for women to build like this image of an investable leader?
That's a really good question. And it's a question that is quite close to my heart because I know based on recent research that women still get such a tiny slice of the investment compared to men. My recommendation is always when I'm working with women, two things. Firstly, build yourself a network. So build a network of not only other women and female founders, but look to get other men on your side, whether they're founders or other investors, just to kind of support you through that process. The other thing that I would say is lean into that. There's nothing wrong with challenging the status quo. And actually, there is so much research out there which says that women get such little investment compared to men. So I think, some of the women that we've worked with, like Catherine Parsons, she's been very open about saying, why not? I'm making just as much money as my counterpart in the same industry. Why is it that I'm not getting the same level of investment? So those would be the two things I would say. Okay,
great. And Ben's popped up. If you're a founder who's super busy and wants to get a profile, should you just buy it in? So does that support people managing your social or paying for promoted social?
Yeah, I mean, naturally I'm going to say yes, but what I would say is it really depends on what your priorities are as a business. So, there's probably a reason why you're super busy. I would look at what that reason is. If you're deep in, platform or product development, it's probably best to get that finished before you start putting your head above the parapet. And yeah, I would just say, look at what your objectives are. And if having a profile is going to help you advance towards those objectives, then yes, see if people can support. But otherwise, if you don't have the resources, some of those tips I talked through can get you started.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Alex. Sorry, I'm just dropping a little message in for everyone there about the Bristol Tech Festival, which is happening soon, and you can find more information on that link. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be doing some networking now. I don't know if you'll be able to stick around and meet some people in the networking section. But if not, I'm sure you'd be happy to speak to anyone who wants to speak to you via other channels. Absolutely, yeah. Please do drop me a line if you want to. And it was a real pleasure presenting to you all. Thanks so much. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Like I say, the networking section will be opening up shortly. You can all have a chat there. That's Uru, by the way. Zara mentioned my cat. He's also a friend of yours, Zara. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.